It was supposed to be just another hiking trip. 5 friends seeking adventure deep in the isolated wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains. Jessica, David, Sam, Megan, and Kyle had been best friends since college, and they'd done this every year. A week in the mountains, no cell phones, no distractions, just nature and the thrill of the unknown. This time, however, something felt different. As they made their way deeper into the forest, the dense canopy above blotted out the sun, casting long shadows across the narrow trail. The air grew colder, the silence unsettling. Even the birds had stopped chirping, and an oppressive sense of unease settled over the group. Day 1 was uneventful, though they couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from the trees. Jessica, the most experienced hiker, dismissed their growing paranoia, chalking it up to the eerie isolation. "It's just the wilderness," she said. "The quiet messes with your head." But by day 2, strange things began to happen. It started with the sounds, whispers that echoed through the trees at night, voices that seemed too far away to be real, yet too close to be imagined. The fire crackled in the dark, but it couldn't drown out the faint murmur of those chilling voices. "Maybe it's just the wind," Kyle suggested, though his voice trembled as he said it. No one believed him. That night, Megan woke up screaming. Her tent was torn open, the fabric shredded, as though something, or someone, had tried to claw its way inside. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "I saw something out there," she stammered, her eyes wide with fear. "It was watching me." The others tried to calm her down, but deep inside, they all felt it too. Something was wrong. They weren't alone in these mountains. Day 3 was when the true nightmare began. They tried to push on, to make it to the next campsite, but the trail seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways. No matter how far they walked, it felt like they were going in circles. The trees grew closer together, the sky darker, and the whispers, those voices, they were louder now, more distinct. Sometimes they sounded like people they knew. Sometimes they called their names. By dusk, they were completely lost. Panic set in, and the once close-knit group began to fracture. "It's the forest," Sam said. "It's messing with our heads. We need to stay calm." But calm was impossible when the forest seemed alive, and something was hunting them. That night, as they huddled together around a dying fire, a figure emerged from the shadows. At first, they thought it was another hiker, lost like them. But as it drew closer, its shape twisted in unnatural ways. It was tall, too tall, its limbs too long, its eyes nothing more than hollow pits of darkness. Jessica screamed, grabbing a burning log from the fire to ward it off. But the creature didn't flinch. It let out a sound, a low, guttural growl that shook the very ground beneath them. And then it attacked. Kyle was the first to go. One moment he was standing by the fire, the next he was gone, dragged screaming into the woods, his cries echoing through the trees until they were abruptly silenced. The others ran, stumbling blindly through the dark forest, not knowing where they were going, only knowing they had to get away. But the whispers, they followed. The shadows, those tall, twisted figures, they followed too. By morning, only 3 were left: Jessica, David, and Megan. But Megan had been injured during the night. Her leg was bleeding badly, and they had no way to treat it. They were running out of food, out of hope. "We need to keep moving," David said, his voice barely a whisper. "We can still make it out of here." But as they pressed on, the forest seemed to warp around them. The trees bent into unnatural shapes. The sky grew darker, even though it was midday. And the voices were so loud now. They sounded like Kyle. They sounded like Sam. They were calling for help, begging to be saved. By nightfall, Megan couldn't walk anymore. They set up camp, knowing it was probably futile, knowing that the things in the woods would come for them soon. They didn't even bother with a fire. And sure enough, they came. Jessica woke to the sound of Megan screaming, but when she turned to help, it was too late. The creatures, the demons, had surrounded her, their long, clawed fingers digging into her flesh. They dragged her away into the darkness, just as they had done with Kyle. Now, it was just Jessica and David, running through the woods, their breaths ragged, their hearts pounding in their chests. But the forest, it never ended. The trees seemed to stretch on forever, an endless maze designed to trap them, to drive them mad. Then Jessica tripped, falling hard against the ground. David stopped to help her, but as he did, a shadow fell over them. It was one of the demons, its eyes gleaming in the dark. "Run!" Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. But David didn't move. He stood there, frozen in fear, as the creature reached out for him. Jessica didn't look back. She ran, tears streaming down her face, the sound of David's final scream ringing in her ears. The whispers chased her, the demons close behind, but somehow, miraculously, she made it out. At dawn, Jessica stumbled into a small mountain town, her clothes torn, her body bruised, her mind shattered. The locals found her wandering near the edge of the forest, muttering about demons and death. She was the only one who survived. The others were never found. To this day, the people of that town warn hikers not to venture too deep into the forest, especially after dark. They speak of strange happenings, of whispers in the trees, and of the demons that hunt anyone foolish enough to enter their domain. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the voices of the lost, calling for help from somewhere deep within the shadows. But no one ever answers.